Welcome to lesson 15 of Google Sheets for Beginners. Again, not really just for beginners. Today's lesson in particular, this is tips and tricks. Just a few little tidbits, things that will really help you, and very simple things that once you know them, if you didn't already know them, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't already know that, because that makes my life a whole lot easier. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to have, this is just I think four or five specific tips and tricks, little things I'm going to show you how to do that will make working with Google Sheets a lot easier for you. Just a reminder, don't forget, in the bottom right hand corner of this video, there's a little cogwheel, settings wheel. You click that button, make sure you're watching this in high definition, the highest possible available to you. Also, you can change the speed. If I'm going a little bit slow for you, you can make me go faster. And don't forget, you can always jump around in the video, go back, pause to rewatch something if you missed it, so that you can see it again. All right, so let's jump into the lesson today. I'm going to disappear. And you can see we're on our student info sheet. Let's see. So on this sheet, you'll see that over here we have three columns: student, student, student. And that one I can kind of see what that is. And I think all the numbers are in here, but I can't tell what's the difference between these numbers. What are these numbers? Because the columns are kind of squished. So, of course, I can go over here and just, move that. Go over here and move that. Oh, I still can't see it. Ah, now I can see. Oh, that's a student number. That's a student ID. What's this one exactly? Student CID. Meanwhile, sex has lots of space for a small word, and name has a bunch of white space. So, of course, I can change all of those like I just did, but there's an easier way. And this is one of the first things I generally do when someone sends me a spreadsheet or I download a spreadsheet. A lot of times, if you're working with other databases online and you download a spreadsheet or a CSV file, we learned how to open CSV files in Google Sheets. Sometimes you'll do that and they'll look like this. The spacing is weird. There's not enough space for some columns and too much space in other columns. Well, there is a trick to automatically fix that. And if you click up here in the top corner, that top left-hand corner, you click up in that corner, you can see it highlights, it selects the whole sheet. Now all you got to do is hover over any of these lines, and again, if you were to click and drag, that does something else, but you just hover till you see that little both ways arrow, and then you double click. As soon as I double click, look what it did. It automatically spaced everything out. Now look how all the columns seem close to being even to each other, and there's enough room so that you can read everything without there being overly excessive space. Now, me personally, under grade, I think that I don't need that much space for that, so I'd have it like that. But that is a very simple way for it to auto adjust the width of these columns to accommodate all the data. Now, nothing is hidden, everything is visual, but you can see how with name it was like this before, and it knew that it didn't need all that dead space, so it helped to bring it down to be closer to the rest of them. It makes it more even. We can jump over to our movie database, and you can see that. You can see how you can't read all the movie titles because some of them are hidden. These links in the Wikipedia, those you can't read almost any of those. Directors, I think that is very hidden. Some of these names are hidden. So again, top left-hand square, click that. That selects everything. And then hover over any of the column separator lines at the top until you see that little right-left arrow, and then double click, and you see it made the adjustment. Now I can see all the names. Now I have enough room to read all the links. I can see all the directors' names. Everything is now visible. Now you don't see it quite as often in rows. Rows generally don't have that issue. The space is fine, but this will work for those. So let's say you got a spreadsheet and for some reason the rows were all messed up, where they were like this, where some of them weren't as tall as they needed to be to see the data, it will work for them. So if I highlight that and I click or hover over the line between two rows where you see the up-down arrow and I double click, you can see now everything is spaced evenly. So it does work for rows. Rarely will you need to use that, but it does work. Now on columns, if you don't highlight the whole sheet, you just highlight the line between two columns and you double click, you can see it adjusts it just for that. So it makes sure there's enough room to see what's there. Now you can see when I do the whole sheet and do that, because it's applying it to it applies it to the whole sheet, so it's trying to figure out the best for the whole sheet. But if it's just one column, then it's based just on that column. So if month of birth was like that, where you couldn't read it all, you just highlight that column and then hover between. Actually, you don't even have to highlight it. You just hover between. It knows to look at those two columns, and I double click, and it says, okay, we need to adjust that out. So you can do it for just a single column, just by hovering over that line and double clicking, and it will auto adjust that single column. But if you need to do the whole sheet, you first click in the top left box and then you double click the line and it applies it to the entire sheet. So that is auto adjusting the width of columns to accommodate all the data inside. As you can see, it's a really simple way, if you get a sheet that's all messed up, to immediately get it so that you can read the data the way that you would expect. So number 2 that we're going to talk about today, tips and tricks, is freezing rows for scrolling. So let's jump back over here to the movie database. So you can see this top line. I'm going to make this bold so it stands out a little bit more. And so you have a movie title, release date, Wikipedia, all these things. But if I start scrolling down, now that disappeared. So I come over here to these names. I'm not sure which of these names is the director, which of these names is the actors. I don't know. So there's an easy way to do that. You just go up to View, and then you go to Freeze, and right here, no rows, 1 row, 2 rows, or up to any particular row. But I'm going to say 1 row. That's the one you'll use the most, because now your titles, this row is frozen. So as you scroll, you can see, even if you go all the way down to row 102, you know that's the movie title, that's the release date, DRL, genre, director, because row 1 doesn't scroll. It stays frozen so that you can see. If you had data that was also related to that wasn't part of your actual data set, but was more of a description of what row 1 was, and you wanted to keep that, you could also go View, Freeze, and say 2 rows, and then the 2 rows would stay frozen. And you can also even view up to any particular row that you're on right now. And there are some circumstances where you might want to do that, but honestly, we're just not going to talk about that right now because that's a little bit more advanced. And I almost never use that. Really what I use is freezing the top row, occasionally top 2, but usually top row, and then also sometimes the first column. For example, let's say we were scrolling. Now we have all the movie titles. Let's say we wanted to look at The Secret Life of Pets, and we wanted to know what actors are in that. And we start to scroll over, and then as we're scrolling over, okay, well, I'm on cast, but wait, what line number was The Secret Life of Pets on? Was it 437, 438, 436? I don't remember. Because now it's gone, I can't see. So, same thing. You can go to View, Freeze, and go to 1 column. So now the movie title will stay as I scroll down. The titles at the top stay. Now as I scroll over, you can see that stays. So now I can go to The Secret Life of Pets, and under cast I can see, because Secret Life of Pets is still there, so I know what line I'm looking at. So that's why freezing rows or columns can be very useful. I'll show you a quick tip. There is another way to do that, and that's just this gray bar. You see when I hover over that gray bar, that's showing you what's frozen, and it turns into a hand. I can grab that, and I can move that back over here. Now nothing's frozen. Same thing with the top. I can hover over, I can grab that and move it. Nothing's frozen. If I want to get it back, there's no gray bar there, but you can see the gray bars are here. So remember the top box, if you just click in that box, it selects everything, right? But if you hover over that gray bar, you can drag it down and that freezes that row. Or if you hover over the gray bar in that box for the vertical bar and drag it over and drop it, now I've frozen the first column. So again, you can do that by going to view and then going to freeze, and then you can freeze columns and rows, or you can just grab this bar. You can also move it down, so if I wanted to freeze the top 3 rows, I could just, now the top 3 rows are frozen. So 2 ways to freeze rows. Again, most of the time you're just going to be freezing the top row and the first column. That's generally what you do, so that as you scroll you can know who or what this information is pertaining to in the first column, and so that as you scroll down you know what that information is. So that's tip number 2, freezing rows. Let's go to number 3. Number 3 is just a quick little tip. Sometimes, let's see, let's go to this sheet. Sometimes you have something that you have 2 lines that you want in one cell. So let's say I'm going to say, well, let's just add to this chart. So apples and oranges, bananas, but let's say our next one is 2 in 1. You have to get 2 things together. We're going to say strawberries and limes. I don't know why. That's just what I'm going to say. Now right now, because there's nothing in here, you can see that whole thing. But we're going to put information in here, and now you can't see it. So, well, let's say, what if we make this row bigger? Let's make this row bigger. Well, it doesn't help, because data by default is always across left to right. But here's a trick. Here's a way you can make that data not just be straight across. If I hit strawberries, and then I hit Alt and then Enter, look at that. I went down to a second line, but inside the same cell. And limes. If I can get my typing right. Now you see strawberries and limes is within one cell, but on 2 lines. See, normally if you just type strawberries and then hit return, and limes, well, now that's 2 different cells. Strawberries is on row 6 and limes is on row 7. That's not what you want. So to get it in the same one, you would do strawberries and then Alt, hold down your Alt button and hit Enter or return, and you can see it returned, but you're still in row 6 and limes. And now you can have multiple lines within the same cell, and you can go further. So if you're on limes and you hit Alt and Enter again, and lemons and limes would have made more sense than strawberries and limes, but hey. So that's how you can stay in the same cell but go down to a different line within the same cell. Hold down Alt and hit Enter. And so that's a cool little trick. I'd been using spreadsheets for years and years and years and years and years and didn't know that trick. And someone at my office showed me that trick, and there are times when that is truly a lifesaver. Yeah, it can be very useful. So just remember, if you want a second line within the same row or the same cell, then you hold down Alt and Enter, and then you can continue typing on a second line in the same cell. So that was tip number 3. Number 4, this is just a little one. This is just a way to deselect something that you've copied. So if we go here and we say we go here and we Control C to copy, and you can see that dotted line, and then we go over here and maybe we paste, Control V. Now we go back over here. Is that a bad example? Yeah, that was a bad example. Stay on the same. Control copy, control paste. Oh, that's not what we wanted. All right, I'm going to get this for you in a second because this can be a useful tip. You run into times where you've copied something. Oh, here we go. Okay, so right now this dotted line is on this whole chart. But let's say I didn't mean to do that. I meant to just copy the names and the amount paid, not the amount owed. So I double click. But wait a second, how come it's not unselecting that? If you need to deselect a copy selection, escape key. Generally speaking on keyboards, escape keys are in the top left. So I'm going to hit escape, and you see how that the dotted line, now nothing is selected. So that's what that is. Let's go to a sheet where that might be a better example. So let's say I wanted to copy all the student names, and I went down and I hit Control C. So you can see the dotted slash line all the way around it. That's my selection. I'm like, oh, wait a second. I did not mean to copy the titles. I just wanted the names. You know what? I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm going to do something else. Well, how come that's staying copied? Why is that staying copied? I don't need that to be copied anymore. I'm not using that. I'm moving on to something else. Again, just hit the escape key and you'll see it deselects it. It's just one of those little things. It's not something that matters that often, but there have been a few times where I had Control C, I had copied something, and I meant to, then I started to do something else. I realized I didn't need that to be copied, and that was getting in the way of what I needed to do. And I couldn't figure out, well, how come I can't just uncopy or unselect the copy? And again, just hit that escape key, and if you hit the escape key, it will deselect the part of the table that you've copied. So that's it for these tips and tricks. Again, we talked about auto adjust the width of columns, or also height of rows by top left-hand corner, click in that box to select your entire sheet, and then hover over the line between any two columns and double click, and it will auto adjust the whole sheet so that you can see all the info, and try to also keep them similar as far as width. And if you don't have anything highlighted and you just want to auto adjust the width of just a single column with nothing highlighted, you just double click, hover over the line bordering that column and double click, and it'll just auto adjust that single column. Then we talked about freezing rows. You can freeze rows and columns. Remember, you go to View, Freeze, or just grab that little gray handlebar that's around the top left box and drag it down to the row or rows that you want to freeze, or other column or columns you want to freeze, which allows you to scroll but still see what the titles are or what the information pertains to. Very, very useful. Then we talked about having two lines inside a single cell, and the way to do that is to hold down the Alt and hit Return, and then you can continue typing on the second line. And then lastly, just pretty simple, the Escape key. If you ever have something that is, you've highlighted something, you've Control C to copy, and later you're trying to do something else and that selection is still selected as a copy selection and you don't know why, you just want to get rid of it, then you hit the Escape key and get rid of it. So again, those are just sort of four very random, not necessarily connected to each other, but very useful tips and tricks. The freezing rows and the auto adjust of the columns, those are ones you're going to use a lot. I use those all the time with my spreadsheets, and you probably will too. Anyway, that's it for this lesson. If there's any questions you have about any of the stuff I covered in this lesson, post them in the comments section below. I will do my best to get back to you as quickly as I can. Don't forget to click that like button to say thank you if you appreciate the work that I've put into these, because I'm doing my best to try to get you helpful information, and clicking that like button helps me out. Also, subscribe to my channel. You can check out my other videos. I do a lot of product reviews and dog product reviews, and then just some fun videos that you might be interested in, or at the very least favorite this playlist if you just want to keep up with this playlist, which will all be Google Sheet lessons. And yeah, I guess that is it for this lesson. So until the next one, have a great day.